you done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leonard joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias.
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What looking at you, give me funny, lad.
Grammy Award winner Maya joins us.
How are you?
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat, Brad Gilmore.
Welcome back to ESPN 97.5, 92.5. Brad Gilmore here in Houston. We have Jeff Smith in Boston joining us on the show today. We have an actress who you've seen on the stage and screen and everywhere in between, an Oscar-nominated performer who joins us right now on the line, Lesley Ann Warren. Lesley, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, and I'm happy to be here. So, yeah, all good.
Well, we're happy to have you. I mean, you've kind of been, I believe, and everybody, if you're a movie or television fan, and who isn't, you've been in our lives in one way or another. I think everyone has a Lesley Ann Warren project that they hold near and dear to their heart, so we're excited to talk to you about some of them. What I kind of wanted to start off, though, with, Lesley, is kind of your beginnings in the entertainment industry. I find the origin story of people so fascinating. I know that I believe you had a parent or something that was kind of in show business in some ways, but where did it all begin for you?
Well, my mom was a singer, but she actually gave up. She was a wonderful singer, and she was actually, I have a picture of her, and it's the Copacabana in New York, with an awning that said Manhattan's newest dream girl, and that was my mother. And she, was a pretty successful singer in New York at the time. But when I was born, she gave it up. She didn't want to continue. She wanted to have another baby after me and be a homemaker. And so it was really, my parents, we lived in Manhattan, and they were very, cultured and loved the theater and movies and the arts. And they took me to my first show when I was 3.5, which was The King and I. And I came home, and we had a neighbor in the building that was in a dance sort of group of two people, two brothers or something. I can't remember. But he was our neighbor, and he came over, and he said, "Show me what the show is about. Show me what the play is about." And I started doing some of the dancing that I saw in the play. And he turned to my mother, and he said, "She wants to dance. You need to find some classes for her." Well, I didn't really start ballet until I was 6. But I started very seriously with a Russian teacher. Actually, my first teacher was an English teacher in the Royal Ballet. And then I started studying with a Russian teacher at 9. And I really studied ballet intensely until I was about 14. I got into the School of American Ballet, which was Balanchine School, still is. And I studied there for a summer. And then I continued studying, but my girlfriend was a young actress, 14 years old, 15 maybe, in Bye Bye Birdie. And her name was Leda Edmonds. And I used to go backstage and watch the show from the wings. And I thought, I want to do that. And so I started taking jazz classes and singing lessons and acting lessons. And I snuck off to an audition when I was 14 for Bye Bye Birdie, the national company. And I got it. And my parents wouldn't let me take it because they wanted me to finish high school. So I thought my career was over. But I was devastated. But then I started seriously studying, the other kinds of dancing, singing, etc. And I formally started auditioning when I was about 16 because I graduated high school at 16 and a half. I got my first Broadway show then, and it was 110 in the Shade. And I auditioned over a period of 6 months, and I won the Most Promising Newcomer Award that year. And then it sort of took off from there.
That's incredible. I mean, it all started kind of with ballet and getting into that. I guess my question would be to follow up on that. What lessons did you learn from the Russian dance teacher, the English dance teacher that you talked about in ballet, that discipline of ballet that really translated over to when you became an actress on stage and screen? Were there certain lessons or disciplines that were instilled upon you during that time that you were able to kind of carry forward with you?
Well, you actually said it. And it's the discipline, the absolute discipline of ballet, because it's incredibly intense and serious and structured. And, I learned how to do that and to be committed and to be observant. And because in ballet, you learn by watching. And so, and rehearsing, and doing it over and over and over again and not complaining. So that by the time I got to my first Broadway show, and it was choreographed by the legendary Agnes DeMille, I don't know if you're familiar, but she was the woman who really changed the face of musical theater. She choreographed Oklahoma and Carousel and all these incredible musicals, and she was the choreographer, and so she was very demanding. And I was 17, and she was incredibly demanding, and but I'd already been with demanding teachers. So I knew what that was about. I knew how to do that, And it also gave me, as I continued into my acting career, it gave me the capacity to utilize my entire body in creating a character. And a lot of actors don't have that training. So they essentially act from the neck up, But because of dancing, I was able to really create characters that had a whole particular way of walking, talking, moving their body, expressing themselves. That was available to me because of all my dance training.
Now you go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just going to say that makes total sense because I'm just thinking about some of your roles that you're more famous for. That are so physical. I mean, I was just watching this is strange. I was watching your episode of The Muppet Show this morning on Disney Plus, and talk about you were required to basically match the energy of these amazing articulated characters, and you kept up right with them, even with your facial expressions and everything. And I'm thinking of just your characters in Victor Victoria or Life Stinks, where you're very animated, and of course Clue, which we'll be bringing up a lot. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you got that right. I was very, what I mean is that's exactly what I meant when I was trying to express about how I was able to utilize the dance training. And, and the other thing I think about dancing is that, you are creating these magical scenarios. And I remember I did the first play that I did out here in Los Angeles was at the Mark Taper Forum. And it was a play called Metamorphosis. And the audition for Paul Stills, who was a very famous director coming out of Second City, it was just he and I in this big, huge rehearsal space. And he said, okay, now I want you to be a fairy princess, and you're being chased through the forest by a bunch of gnomes and wood people, and I immediately did it because in ballet, especially, you're creating these worlds that are, purely fantasy in many cases, and you have to jump in with great belief and imagination. So it also allows me to have that way in to a character as well.
Now, you mentioned with ballet, you learned a lot from watching others and kind of I guess, from a visual learner, watching what they were doing on the stage and kind of adapting it in your own. When you get into acting, did you kind of do the same thing? Were there certain actors that you would look at and say, oh, okay, I see how they're doing that, or I see how they're entering the scene this way. I see how they took the script and kind of made this line reading their own. Were you looking at others? And if so, who were some of the actors that you looked up to?
No, that's really, you can't actually, in my opinion, you can't actually do that as an actor. You have to create from inside of yourself, and then the situation, the circumstance, the relationship the character has to the other actors. You can't really, I think, emulate somebody else's way in. I had people I looked up to that I adored. I grew up absolutely, my all-time favorite, I think, was Natalie Wood. I loved her, and Audrey Hepburn, and some of those women carried a kind of an interesting combination of beauty and vulnerability, and yet, intelligence and a sense of whimsy in some of them. So I just love their work, but I didn't try to emulate their work because I don't think it does work as an actor. I don't think that's the way to do it.
Now, how long were you doing, Broadway and plays in theater before you made the transition into television and film?
Well, I was on Broadway doing 110 in the Shade. I auditioned during that time, which was my first show. I auditioned during that time for Cinderella, and I got it. And so they gave me some time off to do the show, which was about 3 weeks, I think. And then I was supposed to go back and join the show on the road, which was very hard for me. I was really young. I was still like 18 and a half, and so I had a hard time going back in the show, and I kind of wanted to be home. But I finished. Cinderella was a joy. Going back in the show is not such a joy. I did a few more weeks of it, and then I really wanted to come home. And but I came home, and I was asked to fly out to California to screen test for The Happiest Millionaire, which is my first movie, which was Walt Disney's last movie. And I spent a few weeks out here in LA doing, learning the choreography, learning a couple of the songs, learning some of the scenes, being fitted in some of the ideas of the costumes for that time before we actually got into the designing of the clothes. And then doing a real screen test, which they don't do anymore. It was a real, with on the lot, and with on the stage with cameras and lights, and the whole thing, and I got it, and so I, moved out to LA, and they taught me how to drive because I didn't know how to drive. They put me in a beautiful apartment, and I started. I can't remember how long it took for us to shoot that, but it was a huge production. It was, as I said, Walt Disney's last film. And
did you get to meet Walt during that time?
Oh yes, quite a lot.
Talk to me about Walt Disney, because for me, he's such a mythological figure. And to have that experience around him must have been incredible.
Incredible. I mean, you have to remember I was so young but I had just come off of doing Cinderella with Richard Rodgers, who was a giant as well, a giant, and I was just, I was in Cinderella was Ginger Rogers, who played my mother, and Walter Pidgeon, who played my father, and, Celeste Holm, who was the fairy godmother. So I was surrounded by legendary, brilliant people from the very beginning, which was astounding. And then, so when I got to Walt Disney, I was still in awe, 100%. But he was, he was like this gentle, loving grandpa. He was just so, what he was like elsewhere, I don't know, but he was so kind to me. And the Disney lot at that time was everything that you would hope emanating from Walt Disney. So it was pristine. It was beautiful. It was the food in the commissary was delicious. You know, it was really run by somebody who had input in every area of his studio. I mean, he knew. I've said this before, but it's true. He knew what the animators were doing on a particular day, what the Sherman Brothers were were writing for the music and the lyrics, as well as what color ribbon was in my hair. You know, his attention to detail in running the studio was extraordinary, really. And so they put me under contract to Walt Disney for 2 pictures, but the sad part was that when I came back to do the second one, he had passed, you know.
So up until that point, he was still heavily involved with everything that was going on at the studio and with every production. That's amazing.
Everything. I think probably down to the last moment. You know, he didn't tell people he was sick. He didn't,
right.
You know, he smoked a lot. He had a terrible cough, but he didn't, you know, nobody knew until the very, very last moment, you know. So he continued to work, you know, and be there. I mean, and none of us knew. So it was, you know, it was a shock and a tragic one.
Did you have the experience? You hear this a lot when he was hands-on with young actors and actresses like Kurt Russell and Haley Mills. Mm-hmm. You said he was kind of a grandfather figure. Did he take you to Disneyland and really, you know?
He didn't take us to Disneyland, but I had dinner at his home with his wife.
That's better than Disneyland. Yeah.
Better than Disneyland, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Because we were working. Yeah, we were working really hard. So to get to be in that kind of a private space with him, you know, with just a few other people, you know, I think the Sherman Brothers might have been there, and, you know, but it was just incredible to, you know, be there with him and, you know, at his dinner table, and magical, you know, really magical. And then, you know, he was on set a lot. He was there a lot, you know, so, and in the recording studio, and, you know, I got to be around him a lot, and I'm forever grateful for that time.
And you mentioned you were so young when this happened. Looking back, did you really feel like how amazing this was? This was your second filmed production, and like 2 out of 2 are with these amazing icons in the industry. Mm-hmm. Did you think, oh, I guess this is what it's like? Or did you realize at the time how amazingly fortunate you were?
I was so enveloped in the desire to be good and to be absolutely great and to do my very best and to have them love me and, you know, respect what I was doing. And that was that's where all of my energy went. I don't think I spent a lot of time thinking about, oh my God, you know, this is so, I'm in the presence of such masters. But because of that, I was so driven to do to be excellent. And that was my whole consuming, you know, passion.
You know, and Jeff is right, you were 2 for 2 out of the gate. And I think very few actors have like 2 great, like their first 2 film productions are so massive, and they're also well received by audiences and critics alike. After The Happiest Millionaire and Cinderella, is that when kind of the fame, for lack of a better term, started setting in? Would you go out and people start recognizing you? And if so, like, how did you deal with that?
You know, I went back to New York to do another Broadway show with Elliot Gould called Drat the Cat. And again, I was, you know, when I did 110 in the Shade, which was my first show, and I won that award right out of the gate. And I was so young and so sort of, I don't know what I was both shy and, you know, not at my work, but as a person. And so when people would come to the stage door, I would wait until they left before I came out. I was so ill-equipped to deal with all of that adulation from fans, you know. So when I went back to New York to do Drop the Cat, I was still so consumed with wanting to be, you know, fabulous and to please Bill Layton, the director, and that's what I was, you know, I didn't think about, never ever thought about things like, an Academy Award or you know, I never thought about that. I mean, and that's not a lie. It's the real truth. I didn't think about that, you know, so for me, it was always the work. You know, that's what I was consumed by, you know, and wanting to do the very best I could ever do, you know. So I drove myself hard, you know.
Well, it drove yourself hard to many successes, and I want to talk about Victor Victoria here in just a moment. Before I do, one of my favorite things that you did is that came to me later in life. I found it, I don't know, a few years back. Was It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman.
Yeah.
I love this so much, and for people who don't know, it was a TV musical of the story of Superman. You play Lois Lane. My question is, one, what are your memories of working on that? And two, taking on the mantle of Lois Lane before, really, I believe this was before. Is this right after Superman the Motion Picture?
I think it was before the movie.
It was before the movie.
You know what? I'm not sure.
I think it was around the same time, and if not right before, maybe right after, but it's before.
I tested for Lois Lane, the movie. They brought me to London to test, the screen test for Lois Lane. I was in a play at the time with Elizabeth Ashley in Chicago. I was doing Vanities, this play, and they called my manager and had me fly to London and test, and Margot Kidder tested, and Stockard Channing, and one other woman.
Yeah, some of that footage I think was released on one of the DVDs.
The screen test on that. Yeah. So I don't remember if this was after or before, but I have great memories of that. I mean, it didn't do well, but we had a great time making it. I mean, it was really, really fun. And it was, you know, it was very quirky and sort of, you know, a unique take on all of that, but it was, you know, completely fun. I didn't feel like, oh my God, it's Lois Lane, because it was a musical.
Right.
And somehow that took it in a different direction. So I felt free to create my own Lois Lane. But again, I don't remember if it was before or after the movie.
Yeah, I just looked it up. So the movie came after, so 3 years later. So yeah, you did It's a Bird, It's Playing Superman, and I guess maybe they saw you in that and decided to bring you in for Lois Lane.
Probably, yeah. I would guess, yeah.
When you go in for a movie like that, and this just popped in my head to portray Lois Lane in Superman the movie, and audition and screen test, and then you end up not getting the part for whatever reason, or they go a different direction. Do you go back and watch the movie and then say, "Oh man, I could have done this in this if I had the opportunity," or do you just watch it for as it is and say, "Oh yeah, I'll get them on the next one"?
You know, I watch it for as it is because I love movies. And I love performances, and, you know, but I think what I do actually not, I could have done this and this and this. More to me, more truthful to me is when I see another actor, you know, doing what I was auditioning for, I understand why they made that choice. It's actually very helpful to me to see what another actress would is doing in that piece, because then I go, oh, right, I get it. I get why they went in that direction. And that helps me, you know, because I've always said to young actresses that come to me and want to talk about it, you know, and they think they should be able to do any part, you know, all parts in any part. And what I tell them is that, for instance, Marilyn Monroe couldn't be Audrey Hepburn. And Audrey Hepburn couldn't be Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood couldn't be, you know, Ava Gardner. You know, that everybody brings an essential essence to what they do. And, you know, their talent and abilities, etc., allows them to have a wide range of things they can do. But there is an essential essence, you know. And when I see somebody who gets a role that I really wanted, I'm like, oh, right, I get it. I get why they went that way. And that helps me.
Now, I have a question that not only were you able to watch a performance on a character that you auditioned for, but you actually were cast in and you got to watch it happen in person. Famously, now that Clue has become, this massive cult hit, and stories from the making of it have come out, you were originally cast as Mrs. White.
Correct.
In
That's
Clue,
because
yes. And Carrie Fisher was going to be Miss Scarlet.
That's right.
So
Carrie, dropped out for reasons that we all probably know. But go ahead.
But my question to you is, how close were you to the first day of shooting where you were going to be Mrs. White, and what were your thoughts on how you were going to approach that character, which was so different than Miss Scarlet?
You know what? Honestly, it didn't even get that far, because when Carrie dropped out, they came to me, which was probably a month before, maybe more. They came to me and said, "We'd really love you to play Miss Scarlet." And I had not even begun work on Mrs. White. And I felt much more related to Miss Scarlet. It felt much more right for me, just intuitively inside of myself. So I was thrilled, and when I saw Madeline do what she did, my God, blown away. She's like, I adored her, her comedic sensibility and perspective are so uniquely hers, as hopefully we all are, but I didn't for a second think, what would I have done in that role? It was so, I loved, every second of what she did. As a matter of fact, we drove Jonathan Lynn crazy, because we were all of us were fans and laughing our heads off at each other's work. And he couldn't keep the set together. I mean, we were just like, it was great, but difficult, I'm sure, for him.
Now,
his first movie.
Yeah.
Right, Jonathan. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
And dealing with a bunch of unruly, crazy actors. We were just, just crazy.
Trapped in a house.
I would say, what's that?
Just trapped in a house. Yeah.
With all these characters.
Yeah.
What though, Lesley, about, you said, okay, when you found out you're going to be Miss Scarlet, you're like, oh, this is great, because you said you found more that you related to with her, or you understood her more. What exactly did you understand about Miss Scarlet?
Well, my Miss Scarlet, my idea of her was that she, used her sexuality to not only as a weapon, but to get what she wanted at all times, So, without sounding like an egomaniac, people
go on.
Well, let me just say, things have been written about me in the press, about fantastically complimentary about that part of my, toolkit. So I knew that I was able to bring that, and I loved that she was smart as a whip, even if she wasn't educated, but smart as a whip, and manipulative, but cunning, and, I also loved, I don't know whether this came out of, who knows where it came out of, but I just saw her as I was perpetually sort of just slightly annoyed, just kind of like annoyed at everybody around her, just wanting to get what she wanted. So not, but I hope that's not me, but there was a whole variety of qualities that I thought, I can really dig into this and I know what to do with it.
You could really make the argument that Miss Scarlet was, although you say uneducated, the smartest one in the room at all times. She kind of cuts through the bull, sees it. She's, I guess, street smart would be the word for it.
Yeah, street smart. Yeah. Exactly.
And she definitely stands out. Now, you got to work a lot with someone who I adore. I've gotten to interviewed before, Christopher Lloyd, during the making of that movie. Christopher Lloyd has his own way of doing things. And I think all the actors in that cast were
very singular and unique. Yeah.
Very unique. Yes. Similar and being very unique. How was it was it difficult to balance all of those, uniquenesses, for lack of a better term, all in one cast?
No, I think that they were brilliantly cast. I think everybody was in my opinion, that cast was some of the most extraordinary comic actors, not comic performers, but comic actors, so they all came with that sensibility, but particularly their own, so it wasn't hard for us. It made it much more fun because we were also distinctly different. And I think, Jonathan and his casting director made great choices,
I think they made excellent choices. And for me, when I heard the Carrie Fisher story of she was originally going to be Miss Scarlet, I can't even see it, and I just
me too.
can't see
And I know
her.
knew Carrie.
Yeah.
Me too. I loved her in every way.
Oh, she's fantastic.
We were
Yeah.
friends. Brilliant woman. But I don't see her in that role at all. So I think, that, you believe in destiny, whatever, things happen for a reason, all of that. Somehow it was the zeitgeist, it just was the right moment, for this cast to come together.
Yeah, it's true. I think if you take anybody away out of the equation, it totally changes the movie. And that kind of makes it already feels like a play anyway. And it is interesting that it is done so often as a play now. But there is something musical about it, even though it's not a musical, in the way that just Michael McKean's performance is so different than Christopher Lloyd's, than yours, than Madeline Kahn, than Eileen Brennan, who's amazing.
Martin
and then, of
Mull,
course, Martin Mull, who you've worked with several times. And that's he's amazing, and especially I know Brad is a huge fan of the show Psych.
Yes,
and it was amazing to see the three of you come back, and probably one of the most popular episodes of Psych ever, in the 100 Clues episode.
That's what they said. I know, it's so great. That's so great. And I had just come out of a cast for 3 months. I had broken my kneecap. I had slipped on a cable, and it was awful. But I was in a boot, for 3 months, and I had just come out of it. So I couldn't do all the running that they wanted me to do, the way we did in the movie. So that was kind of disappointing just for me, but it was so great to just have that little reunion. It was so great.
Oh yeah,
I think it was their most popular episode of that time, or that moment or something.
Yeah, it was their 100th episode, and I believe the entire cast was such fans of the movie. They kind of figured out how can we get this cast of characters together, and I thought that the way that they did it was awesome. Did you have any trepidation about it's not a remake of Clue, but it's more of a love letter, but did you have any trepidation about the project?
Well, just, I don't like to try to go backwards. You know what I mean? Right. I don't want to, because I feel like somebody had asked me at some point to play the fairy godmother in a different version of Cinderella. I can't remember what it was for. I don't think it ever got done, but I didn't want to, because, that was a moment that I cherish, and I don't want to, and I know a lot of people do, and I didn't want to, spoil it by showing up in a different way in the same story. So that's just me, that's just me. I'm many people suppose do it and love it, but so I was a little concerned about, is this going to fall so far short, of what we did? But because they're crazy on that show, they were so fun. And, they're just crazy and great and funny. And so it was, it was just a great kind of combination of Psych and their mad cat sort of, behavior.
No, it was so much fun to see even y'all, the three of you and Christopher Lloyd and Martin Mull, all back on the screen together in some similar and familiar way. Are you surprised, though, by the, as Jeff put it, the cult classicness of Clue, and that it still connects to so many people? And I believe, I would almost venture to say it's almost more popular now than ever.
It is. It's crazy. I got an email from Martin the other day saying, "Are you getting massive amounts of fan mail for Clue?" And I said, "Yes." It's so incredible. I think we were really surprised when the sort of groundswell of it started to happen. And I guess that was, I don't know how many years ago, but they had it's probably like 10 or 12 or 15 or something like that. And then it just gets growing and growing and growing. And it's fantastic because when it came out, it got middling reviews and, it was kind of, it was all right. It was not a flop, but it wasn't like some huge, crazy success. And then all of a sudden, now it's just everywhere I go. That's what people, especially young people, they start quoting me the lines and, and they say, did you remember when you said, and I'm like, no, I don't remember. Tell me, but, it's great. I mean, it's so great.
Are there any favorite lines of yours that just kind of popped into me? But are there anything that you see a lot of that people tend to always quote from Miss Scarlet? Or is it just kind of the character that people really connect with the most?
Well, they love her, but they also, want me to say that line about, it's just my defense mechanism, whatever that one is. I don't remember it.
We could do it for you, but we'll spare you.
No, please. Be my guest.
No. Oh,
Okay.
well, I think the line you probably hear the most is 1 + 2 + 2 + 1, which is from the ending where you are the lone murderer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's always, they always talk about that one. And then there's one other that somebody actually wrote me today, and I can't remember it right this second, but they
Oh, I bet it's let us in, let us in, let us out, let us out.
No,
No, it's not that one. That's a good one that you and Martin have.
My husband he had seen it when it first came out, but we weren't together, and he said, let's watch it. And, honestly, it totally holds up and it's hysterically funny. And so I think maybe that's why it's just such an iconic classic,
Yeah, it definitely, and it's one of the movies too that it's very rewatchable. You can watch it 1,000 times and you see something new or you pick up on something.
Right. Even me, honestly. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. Yeah, it's great. It's so great. I'm so thrilled.
Now, I have I guess, an actor process question for you. And you've been more than generous with your time, so we don't want to keep you too longer. But whether it comes to Miss Scarlet, because you said with Mrs. White, you didn't even start the work on it yet. For Miss Scarlet or for Norma Cassidy that you played in Victor Victoria, my question is this, because I recently saw an interview with Sean Connery when he was doing the third Indiana Jones movie. Steven Spielberg said that Sean came to set with all kinds of notes on the script and really helped the director find the character. What kind of work do you do when you say that prior to stepping on set? Do you annotate the script? Do you think of ideas? Do you try to figure out who this person is? What's the work that you referred to a minute ago?
I definitely try to figure out who the person is, even if it's a, completely imaginatively conceived character like Miss Scarlet from a board game. I try to create a history, a life for her. Who was she before she stepped into the room? What did she care about? What did she want? I try to flesh, and the same thing with Norma Cassidy. I try to flesh them out as much as possible so that they're real breathing human beings to me, and I know who they are before I even start acting. And I also, if it's not indicated in the script, I design the relationships that they have with the other characters. I make decisions about that, not rigidly, but I give myself ideas for how they would respond and react to the other characters, so that if it's not in the script, I will have a life in that moment and set, whether I'm on acting, so to speak, in the forefront of the scene or not, so that my character is fully alive at all times. I mean, a lot of the stuff I did in Victor Victoria was improvised, and I believe that it was improvised so much. First of all, Blake loved it, but more importantly, I think it's because I did all that work on her. I worked with my coach. Her name is Norena. I worked with her, and we created this world for her that she was, in a family of 14, that she lived on the Lower East Side, that she had to always yell because she couldn't be heard by the rest of the kids, that she went to Woolworths, which you probably don't even know, but it was like a 5 and dime. And she sat at the counter and looked through the movie magazines and picked Jean Harlow to copy, that she wanted to be a movie star. I just made up all this history for her so that when I got on set and, Blake realized that I was very comfortable doing improvisation, he would let the cameras roll and I would, go. He would just let me, like that whole, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie that much, but the scene on the train when I'm sort of talking to myself, but I'm really angry, and all of that was improvised, all of it, and the scene with Julie when she comes and tries to, and I think she's going to have sex with me, and, all of that was improvised. So that all comes from knowing the character, and that's the way I was trained, knowing the character, knowing who and what and where, who she is. That helps me tremendously.
So was that recognition that you got from the Academy for that role in particular, was that validating for you? Like, wow, that someone's recognizing all the work that I'm putting into this character, or do awards not mean as much?
Well, I'd never had thought about awards before I got to Hollywood.
Right.
And then you can't help but be, impacted by the mentality, here. So, but when I was when I finished Victoria, and there was all this, buzz, and MGM did my whole campaign. I mean, I do think I hired a publicist at one point because it looked like, oh God, I'm going to get some nominations out of this. And I won the New York Film Critics, I won things. So I got a publicist, and they worked with MGM, and, I was in charge of like giving approval or not to the ads that they wanted to take out. But basically it was all them. And I was beyond shocked when I got the nomination. I was making another movie. I was on location in in Orlando. We were shooting in Orlando. And I got this call, and I was out of my mind with shock. And, it is, I know everybody says this is such a joke, but it does feel like an enormous honor to be included in this.
Sure.
Very elite and specific club, if you will, that it's always in front of your name, Academy Award nominee or Academy Award winner. It's just always, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal. If you're going to work here, you might as well have that.
You might as well.
It's a good thing. It's a good passport.
Not a bad thing to have to precede your name. I think it's better than doctor. I think that's way better. Academy Award nominee. That's better than doctor.
It sounds cooler.
It sounds way much cooler. Lesley, we really have appreciated your time. My last thing for you is throughout your illustrious career, I mean, you're an icon as far as Hollywood goes and in movies and television. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And if something doesn't come to mind, what is the best advice that you can give to somebody who wants to have a career similar to that of Lesley Ann Warren?
Mm-hmm. Well, number one, I didn't go for this career. That was not my purpose. My purpose was always to study, do the very, very, very best I could do. I mean, I remember days on Happiest Millionaire because I did a lot of dancing and singing in that movie as well as acting. And I was tired. And I remember to this day saying to myself in my head, you wanted this, don't give up now, So to work hard, to work really, really hard at what you desire. Don't have your eye on the brass ring. Have your eye on the job, That's number one. And number two, for me, and I think it's so important, it doesn't matter what form it takes, but find something that can give you a very strong spiritual inner life. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be, a peanut butter sandwich. Doesn't matter. Just have something that you can rely on because 90% of it is rejection. And you have to find a way to keep moving forward, which wasn't easy at all at times. I had to develop this. What I'm talking about, I had to work hard to develop this myself.
Absolutely. Soldier on, work hard, find the inspiration and the peace, the spiritual peace, even if it is a peanut butter sandwich, like Lesley Ann Warren said. You got to find it. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. It's been an incredible experience for both of us. So we appreciate your time, Lesley and Warren, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely.
Hurry up, tape running out.